I woke up to the sound of screams that night. They weren't the kind of screams you hear from a quarrel or a drunken brawl. No, these were deep, raw, and filled with fear. I ran outside, barefoot and trembling, just in time to see old Papa Okachukwu's house in flames. And then, I saw him, Adaku, the good farmer, standing in the middle of the road, clutching his hoe, with a look on his face that I will never forget. He looked broken, as though something inside him had been crushed. Adaku had always been known as the good farmer in our village, Umuku. He was tall, wiry, with skin darkened by years under the sun. His hands were rough, but his heart was soft. If someone was hungry, Adaku would give them yams from his barn. If a widow needed help clearing her farm, Adaku was there, hoe in hand, even before sunrise. He never asked for anything in return. But Adaku's goodness was not without its price. You see, kindness can breed envy, and in Umuku, envy is like dry grass in Hammertown, one spark, and it spreads. The trouble started when Adaku's farm began to flourish. His crops were greener, his yams larger, and his harvest bountiful. People whispered that he had a secret charm, that he used juju to steal the blessings meant for others. But I knew the truth. Adaku worked harder than anyone else. One of his neighbors, Mama Igbo, didn't believe that. She was a small, round woman with eyes sharp like needles and a tongue that could pierce stone. She was also as greedy as they come. Her farm was barren, not because the land was bad, but because she spent more time gossiping than farming. Mama Igbo couldn't stand to see Adaku succeed while she struggled. One day, she went to Papa Okachukwu, the village elder, a man whose wisdom was only rivaled by his love for palm wine. Adaku is using charms to steal from us, she told him. That is why his farm is thriving and ours are not. We must do something before he ruins us all. Papa Okachukwu, drunk and easily swayed, agreed. That night, Mama Igbo and a few other envious villagers snuck into Adaku's barn and set it on fire. By morning, everything he had worked for was gone, his yams, his tools, even the shed he built with his own hands. When the villagers gathered to see the damage, Adaku stood silently among the ashes. His face was calm, but his eyes held a storm. I thought he would accuse them, demand justice. Instead, he sighed and said, I will start again. Weeks passed, and Adaku rebuilt. The villagers watched him with disbelief. How could he still be kind? How could he still greet Mama Igbo with a smile, knowing what she had done? It made some of them uneasy, others angry. Mama Igbo, however, was not satisfied. If fire didn't break him, maybe poison will, she muttered. So, one night, she snuck into his farm and poisoned the well he used to water his crops. The next morning, Adaku found his plants withered and dying. I was there when he knelt by the well, scooping the poison water with his hands. He didn't cry. He didn't curse. He just sat there, staring at the ground. Later that evening, I asked him why he didn't fight back. Adaku, why don't you expose them? I whispered. He looked at me with tired eyes and said, if I let their evil change me, then they have already won. My father used to say, the best revenge is to remain who you are. Things came to a head during the New Yam festival. The entire village gathered in the square, dressed in their finest. Even Adaku, despite his troubles, came with a small basket of yams to offer. Papa Okachukwu, as tradition demanded, was about to bless the harvest when he suddenly collapsed, clutching his chest. The crowd panicked, but no one moved to help, no one except Adaku. He carried the old man on his back and ran to the herbalist hut. For days, Adaku cared for Papa Okachukwu, feeding him, washing him, and praying for his recovery. When the elder finally opened his eyes, he wept. Why did you help me after everything we did to you? He asked. Adaku smiled, his face weary but warm. Because doing good is who I am. the truth came out not long after. Overcome with guilt, Papa Okachukwu confessed everything at a village meeting, how he had listened to Mama Igbo, how they had destroyed Adaku's farm and poisoned his well. The villagers were furious, but Adaku stood up and said, "Leave them. What is done is done." Mama Igbo, shamed and broken, knelt before Adaku, begging for forgiveness. "I wanted what you had," she cried. "But now I see that what makes you rich is not your farm, it's your heart." Adaku forgave her, of course. He even helped her rebuild her own farm. And something changed in Umuku after that. People started helping each other more, sharing what little they had. Years later, when Adaku passed away, the entire village mourned. They buried him under the big Iroko tree at the edge of his farm. On his grave, they carved the words, "The good farmer, he taught us that goodness is the greatest harvest." Even now, whenever I walk past that tree, I remember him. And I wonder if I could ever be half as good as Adaku, the man who showed us that goodness, no matter how tested, can never truly be destroyed.